Welcome back, viewers. You are still tuned in to Prime Live. I'm super excited to welcome Amira Asvat. We're finally having a chance to sit down with her, and I hope you enjoy our conversation today. Amira is a CFP lecturer at UJ, the Department of Finance and Investment Management. Now, she is reshaping the way we think about finance, the way we think about investment, and she is here to share all her tips and tricks when it comes to financial education, when it comes to investment. So I hope you have your pen and paper ready, and I hope you're here to listen and reach out for all those tips and tricks. But do stay engaged with us as we delve into the world of financial education, and I hope you end up learning something from our interview today. Assalamu alaikum, Amira. Thank you so much for joining us on Prime Live.
Walaikum salam. Thank you for having me, Nazia. It's good to finally be here.
It's such a privilege to have you in studio with us. I think there are so many people who find it so difficult to navigate their financials. They sometimes don't even know where to begin. So this is such a valuable interview, and thank you for bringing, your knowledge and your journey with us. But let's start off our conversation today by talking about that very intimidating thing. When people hear about how they're supposed to be managing their finances better, it can be really intimidating, especially when you don't know where to start. For a first timer, say someone who's just gotten their first job, or someone who's never really delved into the whole idea of what they should be doing with their finances, what is the first and most important thing you feel they should start their journey with, the first step they should start with?
So you're right. It can be very overwhelming. You start a career, you suddenly have all this money that you've never had before, and all you want to do is go and spend it and buy something that you've always wanted to have. But I think the most important thing would be to budget. Draw up a budget, know how much money you are getting in every month, and know what you're spending the money on every month. And that makes it a little bit easier for you to see, where your expenses lie and what's important and what's less important. What are you spending too much on? So especially for people who are like first-time earners, or people who have just, gotten a promotion at work and suddenly have this like really huge increase, it can be very overwhelming to think that, okay, I've got this money now, what do I do with it? So I think a budget would be your first step.
Thank you for sharing that. I think you've shared something so important there. I think once you have that little bit of financial freedom, you get that itch to want to do everything you've never been able to do before. But without thinking about how you're planning ahead and planning for the future, or even planning for those rainy days. So I think starting out with a budget is a really important step. Now, when it comes to somebody who is, or an individual or business, for example, who is very seasoned when it comes to finances, how they should be managing their finances, what are some of the best tips you can share for someone like that on how to improve their financial strategy and maybe even help them achieve their financial goals a lot quicker?
So for somebody who is seasoned and who sort of knows what they're doing, I think it's important for diversification. So see where you've got money invested in, or what are your future goals or your financial goals that you want to achieve, and look at it that way. If you've got short-term goals, if you've got long-term goals. And this is where having a financial planner can really come in handy, just to help you achieve those goals, knowing into what investments to put your money into, knowing what your risk profile is as a client, and knowing what sort of investments are for you. Because there's a lot of people who think, okay, this is for me, but it's actually not. They might be very low risk investor, and they get put into a high risk fund, which isn't the perfect balance for them. So they're going to lose money, and then they're going to be devastated, and they're going to be so disappointed. So you need to find the right balance of where to put your money in that's going to help you achieve your financial goals.
I think that's very valuable. I think a lot of people hear about the importance of investing for your future and understand the importance of it, but navigating that field of which investments are right for me and which are not. Are you able to share some, basic tips and tricks that we can look at in identifying a good investment and one that might not be so good for you?
So everyone is different, and not all two people are the same. So what might be good for me might not be good for you, and vice versa. I can't say I want to be in that fund because everybody else is in it, or everybody else is investing in it. So I think first step is to do a risk profiler. So that is easily available. You can speak to a financial advisor. You can get it off one of any of the financial planning companies' websites. And it's basically just a list of questions that ask you about how you would invest or how you would save. And from there, you tally up your total, and the amount will tell you what sort of risk profile you fall into, whether you are a high risk investor or whether you're a low risk investor, whether you sit somewhere in the middle. And then there's specific funds that fit those criteria.
Now, when it comes to planning ahead for the future and some of the critical financial skills we all have to have, whether you are somebody who's starting out, whether you're someone who's mid-career, or whether you're reaching retirement, what are some of those critical financial things that we need to know and be aware of or understand better, or, allocate more of our attention to?
So, financial education would definitely be number one on my list. You need to know what is going on. You can't just leave it and think, okay, it'll just, sort itself out, or somebody else will manage it for me. You have to be on top of your game when it comes to finances. You need to know where your money is lying. What is your money invested in? You need to check out for what's happening. So you have to be financially educated and financially literate. There's people who know it all when it comes to things, but there's people who don't know things about it, and you need to speak to people who will know about it. So get in touch with somebody that knows about it and make sure that you know what's happening. Especially when it comes to retirement, you need to know how much you've got saved, how many years you still have for retirement, how much more can you save to make your goals, in order to know how much you're going to be able to get at the end of every month after you've retired. So all those things are very, very important. And before you get to those points, you don't want to get there when it's too late. Like, I've got a year left to retire and now I'm sitting with so much less money than what I should have. So the earlier that you start, whether it's retirement funding, whether it's saving for a holiday or just general savings, the earlier you start, the better it will be for you.
I think you've highlighted something so important there. I think our young people think that, our younger generation who's maybe starting out their first jobs, I think they feel disconnected from this conversation almost. But it's not that at all. You need to start thinking about, you need to have that foresight and start thinking about your financial future from the time you get your first job. And that's the advice that I got, is start looking at retirement annuity options, start looking at long-term investment options to save for your future goals. Maybe you want to start a business one day. And these are all the types of things that young people, I think, need to start thinking about. And something you mentioned is financial education. And that's something you're a huge advocate for. And we're not seeing enough of that in our academic systems in schools. And that's the one thing that's going to help you be successful in this world. What are your hopes for the future of South African education systems? Especially, I'm talking about like primary school and high school. What are your hopes and aspirations for including financial education or financial literacy as part of our curriculum?
So I'm a big advocate for financial literacy. I've been doing it for a number of years now. When I just started out in the industry, it was part of my CSI projects with the companies that I worked for. And it was just a way of me giving back. But not only for me, it was my way of teaching people and saying, listen, there's something that you need to think about. So I went back to varsities. I did a lot of companies, and just wherever I could try and get the word out, I did. Being part of the Department of Finance and Investment Management at the University of Joburg has opened a lot of doors for me. So with my colleagues, we are part of student engagement, and with the community engagement stuff that we do, we go and we actually go into rural areas and we speak to people about saving, about budgeting, about investing. And I think it's something that needs to be brought out, like you're saying, in a much, much bigger scope, because not a lot of people know about it. You're targeting certain areas and you're targeting certain people, and they know about it. That's great. But what about the rest of the people that don't? So I like your idea about primary schools and high schools, and it is initiatives that we are working on. But also for people in the industry and people who, or even people that are not in the industry, people who are just professionals. Just because you're in a certain profession doesn't mean you know everything about your finances or financial planning. So I feel like it's such an important aspect, and it's something that needs to be it has to be brought out there. Word needs to get out about it. So we have now decided, as the Department of Finance and Investment Management, we have now got on board with the continuous professional development, so the CPD points, and we're now going to start awarding CPD points and doing those kind of things. So lectures, seminars, webinars, in order just to create awareness and just to let people know all about it and what's there to learn about it, because there's so much that people need to know.
That's a wonderful initiative, and I really commend the efforts to bring about a platform like this. Like you said, if you aren't somebody who is in the finance space or in the financial planning space, you might need different kinds of financial advice along your career and along your lifetime as well. So that kind of financial education or financial information you will always need throughout your life. So I love that you are providing this platform. I think it's incredible. And when it comes to careers in finance, I mean, you are a lecturer, so of course we have an opportunity to pick your brain a little bit about, what are some of the things to consider for perhaps a matriculant or a young person who might be looking at careers in finance, and how they can, I mean, you've used your platform in finance in such a different way from everyone else. You didn't go and stay stuck at a corporate, you're out there, you're making changes, and you are positively contributing to the profession and to the world itself as well when it comes to financial literacy. What is your message out there to anyone, a young person out there who's motivated and is possibly looking at a career in finance?
So a career in finance is very diverse, but so much fun. I mean, I started off as an advisor, and I worked my way through, and I got into being head of compliance and admin. Because I just didn't like the sales aspect of it. I don't think it's for everyone, but it's definitely it's a fun career to go into if you've got the personality for it. I've been in corporate for a good number of years, and the opportunity came for me to be a lecturer, and I took it. And honestly, I'm really, really grateful that I did, because whatever I learned in all my time that I spent in corporate, I'm actually putting into practice now. So when I'm lecturing, I try and incorporate everything that I've learned in practice into the theory part of it, to try and make it a bit more interesting for the students, and to try and bridge the gap between coming out of varsity and entering the working world, because we all know that's quite a challenge. So that's what I'm trying to do. So anybody who's looking to go into a career in finance or in financial planning in specific, I am rooting for you. I say go for it. There's so much that needs to be done. So people think that advisors are brokers, and they're just trying to sell you something or trying to sell you some insurance policy. It's not just that. We're trying to look at your entire financial plan holistically to tell you what you need, what you don't need, why you need certain things. We're trying to help you prepare for what happens after retirement. We're trying to help you to have an emergency fund for if something happens, because we all know that always happens. We budget and we have X amount of money for a month, and then something comes along, and where do we get that extra money from? So that's what we try and do. We're trying to help you achieve your financial goals through setting up certain things in certain ways in order for you to do that. So a career in finance, financial planning is absolutely amazing. There's so much to learn. You get to meet so many people. No two clients are the same. Their need might be the same, but the way that you're going to go about and help them to achieve it is going to be very different. It's a career where you meet a lot of people. It's a career where you speak a lot. It's a career where you can really be yourself, and you can do things the way you want to do. There isn't like a rule book that says you have to do this, and this is how it's going to be. You make it your own. And that's what I loved about the industry, that it's so diverse and it's so fun and it's so flavorful. So I would definitely be rooting for anybody who wants to go into it.
I think you're relating to anyone who's ever made that transition from being in a university to moving to your first job. And I love your approach to the way you choose to lecture, is to bridge that gap between the practical experience and the theory you actually learn. But in closing, we've loved picking your brain, but we have to pick your brain just one last time before we let you go. If you could leave our viewers at home with any one rule or your one biggest tip of advice that you have when it comes to financial management or financial planning, what would it be?
It would be to have a will. We've seen so many people who pass away without having a will in place, and it causes a lot of problems for the families that are left behind, for the loved ones that are left behind, for just people who were in their lives that were left behind. So a will is one of the most important documents. People say, oh, I don't have assets, or I don't have a lot of money in my bank, so I don't need a will. And it's not about that. If you've got minor children, you need a will, because you need to state in there who do you want to look after your children in the uncertain event that you die. So it goes around a lot of things. It's not just because I've got a lot of property, so I need to have a will. No, it's not about that. Everybody needs to have a will. If you have a bank account, you need to have a will, because when you die, what's going to happen to that money? You need to state what you want to happen to your kids, to your money, to your investments, to your house. You need to state that, because it was yours. You don't want other people making decisions for you, and decisions that you wouldn't be happy with.
Oh, that's very valuable advice, and thank you for sharing that. But Amira, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I've learned so much from you and from our conversation today, and I really want to commend you in your journey, from corporates to now being a lecturer, and in the way that you are giving back in terms of sharing your knowledge, your expertise, and just giving back to allowing people to understand what financial management is, what financial literacy is, as well as sharing with our viewers all your valuable insight and information.
Thank you, Nazia. You are most welcome.
Viewers at home, that was Amira Asvat. I do hope you enjoyed today's conversation. We were talking about all things financial literacy. What are some of the important and crucial things you need to think about when it comes to your financial future? But stay engaged with us on our social media platforms. If you have any questions for Amira, please do also send them through to us on our social media platforms. We'd love to hear from you. Engage with us, comment, especially Gen Zs, all you younger generations out there. If you have any questions about how you can better manage your finances, or what you need to start thinking about, or if you are hoping to be a student at UJ very, very soon, please will also reach out to us on our social media platforms. On that note, it is time for us to head over to an ad break, and we'll come right back.